Is membership in a white supremacist organization disqualifying for people applying to the FBI or work at the FBI, Mr. Langan?
Yes.
Isn't membership in that type of organization inconsistent with the effect law enforcement?
Yes.
How is the FBI coordinating with local and state law enforcement about incoming threats and information about white supremacists and other DBEs? I know, having worked at the Fusion Center, there was an analyst assigned there, as well as, you guys built a skiff there. But there was always some tension with local law enforcement, as you know, and the FBI, because there was a sentiment that, local law enforcement does the work and the FBI comes in at the last minute when the press shows up. I think in many cases that's unfair. But have those coordinating efforts improved over time? The past decade?
Sir, I've been in law enforcement now for 28 years and served for the government for 31 years. I actually have not found that often. There's definitely rivalries, there's definitely frictions that occur on an individual basis, but I found the coordination between local, state officials and the FBI to be very wholesome. Of course, there's at times prosecutorial differences on if the case should be worked at a state level or federal level. But again, I'll refer back to the foundation of what our sharing is, and those 200 Joint Terrorism Task Force with almost 4,500 agents and officers working hand in hand together. So when information reaches their departments that potentially contains a federal violation, ideology, the concern of a JTTF, then that information is forwarded from that task force officer into the JTTF. They can review that information to determine if there's enough predication to move forward with a potential investigation.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Cohen, it's no secret that the IC failed to adequately warn of the insurrection that occurred on January 6th. Sir, can you explain what specific procedures have changed and what reforms have been instituted post-January 6th?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think there are a lot of lessons that we in law enforcement and in the intelligence analytic world learned from January 6th, both the events of that day and the weeks leading up. To the point I made in my opening statement, the understanding that indications regarding an emerging threat may be available through public information that is analyzed by analysis. What we have done since January 6th at the department is we have redoubled our efforts to coordinate the sharing of threat-related information that we acquire or that comes to us through our relationships with state and local private sector with the FBI and others in the federal community. We have become much more forward-leaning as it relates to the analyzing of online activity and evaluating activity from the perspective of the potential risk of violence. We have, I would say that we are probably much more cognizant and mindful about incorporating that threat-related information into operational planning. And I think a very good sort of example of the differences that exist today versus on January 6th would be one just to simply look at what happened on Inauguration Day. After January 6th, the analysis of online activity did not reflect that those who were here on January 6th viewed it as a victory and as the end point of their efforts. They actually saw it as a starting point. And there were calls online for additional acts of violence to be committed both in the District of Columbia and in state capitals around the country on Inauguration Day or in and around Inauguration Day. The response by law enforcement was very different. The response here in Washington included physical security measures in and around the Capitol and other locations, a highly visible presence of National Guard, highly visible presence of law enforcement, a very overt and public security presence in and around District of Columbia and state capitals around the country. Well, what did we see reflected on social media and extremist platforms? A cognizance of those security measures and a reluctance to come to Washington because those who were planning acts of violence viewed it as a trap being set for their arrest or viewed it as not the right time to come and engage because of the security presence. There's a lesson in that. So our analysis has focused much more on understanding when there may be a potential act of violence and then taking steps, sometimes very visible steps and public steps, to create physical security measures that serve as a deterrent.
Chairman Schiff.